From ancient deserts to weathered scrolls, and from the collective soul of a people shaped by exile and pain, emerges a powerful and often contested question. What does the Bible really say about the Black Hebrews? Are there prophetic truths hidden in plain sight, sealed behind mistranslations, colonial narratives, and centuries of religious silence? Across African American communities, in the Caribbean, in parts of West Africa, and among scattered descendants in the Americas, many have begun to reawaken to a spiritual identity long obscured by time and trauma. A growing number of scholars, religious teachers, and everyday truth seekers claim that the descendants of the ancient Israelites may not be who mainstream history has traditionally portrayed. Instead, they argue, the people the Bible calls Hebrews, God's chosen people, were in fact people of African descent. But is this belief merely an emotional search for dignity among oppressed people? Or is it grounded in scripture, archaeology, and historical memory? What if the prophecies of the Bible, the curses, the wanderings, the exiles, the suffering, and the promise of redemption actually spoke directly about a people forgotten by man, but never by God? This article embarks on a careful, deeply researched journey to uncover what the Bible actually says about the identity and destiny of the Black Hebrews. We will trace ancient clues, prophetic utterances, and powerful verses whose meaning has often been lost in translation, misunderstood through Western lenses, or simply dismissed. We will engage both historical documents and modern scholarship, while also allowing the scriptures to speak for themselves. This is not merely a religious investigation. It is a historical unveiling, one that speaks of kingdoms forgotten, empires erased, and a legacy of prophecy that has survived slavery, colonization, and the silence of history itself. To truly understand the significance of the Black Hebrew prophecies, one must begin at the source, the Hebrew Bible, also known as the Old Testament. According to the biblical narrative, the Hebrew people trace their lineage back to Abraham, a man who migrated from Ur of the Chaldees, modern-day Iraq, and journeyed into Canaan, a region covering present-day Israel, Palestine, Lebanon, Jordan, and parts of Syria. The question of race, ethnicity, and appearance is notably absent in the biblical descriptions of early Hebrews. However, modern scholarship and historical analysis provide compelling clues. Canaan was bordered by ancient Egypt to the south, and Kush, modern-day Sudan and Ethiopia, further below, placing the early Hebrews in close contact with African civilizations. In fact, Joseph, the son of Jacob, was sold into slavery and rose to power in Egypt, marrying an Egyptian woman, Asenath, and fathering two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. Moses, too, spent much of his life in Egypt, even marrying a Cushite woman, Numbers 12:1. These connections are more than symbolic. They indicate that Hebrew identity was not divorced from Africa, but deeply interwoven with it. The biblical land of Kush, often associated with the ancestors of Black Africans, is repeatedly referenced in a positive and powerful light. In Zephaniah 3:10, it is written, "From beyond the rivers of Kush, my worshippers, the daughter of my dispersed ones, shall bring my offering." The prophet acknowledges that worshippers of the Most High would come from beyond the rivers of Kush, a poetic reference to the Upper Nile regions. Isaiah 18 speaks of a powerful people, tall and smooth-skinned, whose land is divided by rivers, often interpreted to refer to Kush. Far from being peripheral, these African regions were central to the Hebrew worldview. Perhaps the most cited and controversial chapter in the Black Hebrew movement is Deuteronomy 28. In this chapter, Moses outlines the blessings for obedience and the curses for disobedience that would come upon the children of Israel. While many of the blessings involve prosperity and security, the curses describe a harrowing narrative of dispersion, captivity, oppression, and suffering that eerily mirrors the experiences of millions of Africans during the transatlantic slave trade. Deuteronomy 28:68 reads, "And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again. And there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you." This verse has sparked intense debate. While mainstream interpretations view Egypt symbolically or as an expression of captivity, Many black Hebrew Israelites argue that this is a direct prophecy of Africans being taken in ships to a new kind of Egypt, slavery in the Americas. The prophecy outlines a series of dehumanizing conditions. The Israelites would serve their enemies. Verse 48. Their sons and daughters would be given to other people. V. They would build houses and not dwell in them. V. 30. And be scattered among all nations. Verse 64. When viewed in context, these descriptions align with the centuries-long suffering experienced by African descendants globally. The eerie parallels between Deuteronomy's curses and the experience of the African diaspora have led many to believe that these prophecies refer not to a faraway ancient tribe, but to the black people of today. One of the consistent prophetic themes in the Bible is the scattering of Israel among all nations. In Isaiah 11:11-12, the prophet writes, "And it shall come to pass in that day, that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people, from Kush, from Elam, and from Shinar, and from Hamath, and from the islands of the sea." This prophecy emphasizes that the regathering of Israel will come not only from traditionally Jewish lands, but from a wide range of places, including Kush and distant islands. Psalm 83 describes a conspiracy to cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. This has been interpreted by many black Hebrews as a divine acknowledgement that Israel's identity would be stolen, forgotten, and buried in history. Yet this loss would not be forever. The prophets speak repeatedly of a remnant being awakened and restored. Jeremiah 17:4 foretells, "And thou, even thyself, shalt discontinue from thine heritage that I gave thee." The implication here is spiritual amnesia, an entire people losing touch with their identity, history, and purpose. Only in recent generations have descendants of enslaved Africans begun to revisit this forgotten legacy and connect it with biblical prophecy. In the latter days, the Bible speaks not only of judgment and exile, but of hope and restoration. Isaiah 60 speaks of a time when darkness covers the earth, but the light of the Lord arises upon his people. It says, "Surely the islands look to me. In the lead are the ships of Tarshish, bringing your children from afar with their silver and gold, to the honor of the Lord your God." Isaiah 60:9. The returning of children from distant lands is a major prophetic motif, suggesting that God's people, scattered across seas, would one day return. Zechariah 10:9 declares, "Though I scatter them among the peoples, yet in distant lands they will remember me. They and their children will survive, and they will return." This remembrance has become the heartbeat of the Black Hebrew awakening, a spiritual homecoming as much as a historical one. Africa, too, plays a central role in the final chapters of prophecy. The lands of Kush and Egypt are mentioned as places of refuge, power, and restoration. Far from being a cursed land, as was once falsely preached to justify slavery, Africa in biblical prophecy is a land of kings, worship, and divine visitation. Even the Messiah himself took refuge in Egypt as a child, a profound symbol of safety and significance. The question of the Black Hebrews is more than a historical curiosity. It is a spiritual revelation. The Bible, when read with open eyes and historical awareness, speaks loudly of a people who would be enslaved, scattered, forgotten, and yet eventually remembered and restored. The transatlantic slave trade was not just a crime against humanity. To some, it was the fulfillment of ancient prophecy. This does not deny the identity of others who call themselves Jews today. Rather, it affirms that the chosen people of the Bible were far more diverse, far more widespread, and perhaps far more melanated than most are willing to acknowledge. As more descendants of Africa awaken to this truth, they do not seek superiority, but restoration. They seek to reclaim a stolen legacy, not from others, but from silence. In doing so, they fulfill the very prophecies that were written thousands of years ago. The Bible is not just the story of Israel. It is the story of a people hidden in plain sight, suffering, scattered, yet never forgotten by their Creator.